I tell my kids, I'm like, go buy crappier houses. Seriously, go
Yeah.
buy. I bought houses for $7,000, right? If you got
What?
for 7,000, one of the first houses I ever bought was $7,000. There was a fire in the middle of the living room. Like it burned a hole right through the top of it. Like you walked in the living room, you could see the sky. And like that's what you got it for $7,000. And everybody else was too scared to buy it. I've had that house for 30 something years, right? For 30.
Oh, that's awesome. You still have it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It produces $1,900 a month every single month for
Wow.
30 years. Welcome to the show. Today we got Scott Marek, the financial wizard, the head of Bullet Wealth. Help us really design a future financially that we can live into. It's really a dynamic show. I think you'll enjoy this. Welcome to the show. When we look at wealth management and start to really look at multi-generational wealth, those are big topics to look at. When you sit down with a new a new person to look at their history and really start to look at that path of not just understanding where they are now, but where they want to go in their future. How does that get started?
Yeah. So I think once the family's already kind of built up the wealth and we're looking at passing it down to the next generation, there's a few different things we got to consider, like estate taxes and liquidity. And so what we really typically look at helping clients with is setting up something outside of their estate, like a trust or an LLC, something like that, where then we can gift under the annual gift limits to that trust. And you can do that per beneficiary of the trust. And then once we do that over time, we can establish a trust with credit, and then it could actually go out and get loans outside the state and then purchase investments or purchase insurance or things like that, all done outside of the family's estate. They can then pass down estate tax free to the next generation.
That's awesome. When you look at a family or an individual, right, and you start to prepare for, this goal, to developing a goal, right, to really develop a goal. I'm going through the process right now myself, where I'm starting to look at, all right, I'm going to retire probably in the next 10 years, right? I want to start to look at my retirement plans, and then the ability to pass that on smartly, because the game is not always how much money you make; it's how much money I keep. Right. I mean,
Yes.
I remember the first time I paid $1 million in taxes. I thought to myself, this is nuts. Right. I mean, I didn't get a discount coupon for the, US Postal Service. I didn't get like you could park free at the beach card. I got nothing more than I filed my taxes, and there was nothing special about it. And I realized, man, I should probably work on how to minimize that. It seems like there's other guys who are a lot wealthier than I am that are paying, a lot less taxes.
Yep. Yep. And minimizing the tax is a whole different animal, really making sure that you have the right tax professionals in place, the tax legal in place, and really having that team around you just to make sure you can minimize that. And then once you have it, how do we keep it and then grow it and then pass it to the next generation? And like you mentioned, the goals around that, just really trying to figure out what's important to you. What are your values around money? What do you care about? What do you want to pass to the next generation, or what do you want to give to charity? And kind of really customizing that for you and your family.
It's a tall order, right? Because there's always this idea that, hopefully somewhere I've got enough for me to retire on. And then
Yep.
as we look at the vehicle for the next part, like handing it off to the next group, I've got 5 kids. I've watched families tear themselves apart in not planning that, properly, right? The resentments that get built by not doing that correctly, or really communicating that to the family in a proper way. Families that have literally torn themselves apart because of resentments, because they don't stop and look at this planning, right? Taking some time to think about, all right, when I'm gone, right? I'd like to create a plan so it's crystal clear exactly what I want, right? And sort of
Yeah.
really look at, what should my will look like, right? How intentional do I write that, right? So am I very, very particular about my hard assets, my financial assets, my digital assets, right? So really start to look at that and have a different plan for each one of those and strategies to work, right?
And it feels a little morbid, but I think also adding a video too to really convey some of the intentions behind why you made these decisions. Because if they're just sitting there reading the wills or the trusts. It might sound a little legal because that's what it is. So maybe also including a video with that, really the intentions behind why this person gets this and this person gets that, and why it might not feel completely fair or equitable.
I mean, that's the thing. It's, you know, it feels morbid, but what feels more morbid is when families are left in ruin because of those hidden resentments. And I was talking about this, in preparation for our conversation today. I was talking about this at the table last night, and we had a guest over, and he was talking about how his good buddy has not talked to anybody in his family since the time the parents died because they just couldn't, he just couldn't believe the parents left us, the will the way they did, and left him certain stuff, but he couldn't understand it. And I think you're right in that, there was some logic that the parents had, and it wasn't transferred to him in a way. And all that stuff that was kind of pent up in his life to begin with, right? My
Yeah,
judgment was there was some other stuff that was in the way to begin with,
probably.
right? And then
Yeah.
then you go to this, and now you see they don't love me. My parents didn't love me, and those other kids are rotten scoundrels. And maybe none of that's true. Maybe they were just, hey, they felt like they had more kids, or they had a structure that felt like they needed support in a different way. There's a million reasons why people leave what they leave to their ancestors, but it's kind of a I like your point of maybe doing a video, something where you can really look at that more intentionally.
Yeah, and it's especially tough when there is a family business or some sort of thing where maybe one sibling is operating the business and then maybe one sibling wants nothing to do with the business, but then both of those, it's never going to really feel fair unless if you really detail that out where, okay, the business is valued at this, so you get this, and then maybe there's some sort of life insurance policy in place which essentially like buys the other sibling out of the business, which is a way to do it where it can feel more equitable and kind of keep that family intact, where there's not these arguments and these disagreements over money going on for generations to come.
As we start to put that together, right, putting that plan in action, it takes a little bit to deep dive into your current asset state, right? To be able to go
Mm-hmm.
through that, as I was going through that with my life planning. In fact, I feel like my wife and I haven't completed that at all, right? Because you're right. 'Cause sometimes you feel like, well, I got time, right? I got
Yeah.
time, right? I kind of have this like, well, I got time. I'm not planning on dying anytime soon, but you never know. Life is full of all kinds of mystery, right? I mean, people die from the craziest things, and you don't want to leave your family in that rush. So, as you start to put this together, do you have a strategy that you use with people to help them get to understand their assets, and kind of, what's the baseline they start with to creating this idea? Start looking at this as a project.
Yeah, I think that's one of the really big first points that you need to focus on is just sitting down and kind of gathering and organizing everything. So figuring out, okay, what do all of our assets look like? What all our properties look like? Our businesses, our crypto, our checking, savings, whatever it might be, investment accounts, 401ks, gathering up all of that asset columns and then adding up all of your liabilities, seeing what those are, whether it's car payments, mortgages, boat, whatever. And then just really figuring out and getting a good picture of how does that all fit together, and then which of your heirs would be interested in those items.
Well, when you look at it, I mean, my judgment on this is that it's hard to do by yourself, right? Maybe as a
Mm-hmm.
husband and wife, you can do it, or as a couple, or as a fit, you might be able to. But I think that's why enlisting services of a group like yourself makes sense, right? Like, look, I need you to look at me with no emotional attachment, right? Because sometimes I have this vision of what I think I see, and there's kind of like the reality of what's there. And when we're planning this, we need as clear a picture of assets and the actual situation before we really start to put a plan together, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not understanding that our plan isn't well thought out of, or maybe it's got that emotional attachment that leaves them, feeling a little bit like maybe have more than they think they have, or maybe they don't realize they have less than they think they have, right? Not realizing there's value, and maybe it might be like someone saying, "Hey, I've got a home But what about all the assets inside the home, right? Hey, I
Yeah.
want to give this home to that person. Maybe have multiple homes, and I'll give this one to this kid and that one to this kid, but not realizing that there's, different things in each home, right? Or it
Yeah.
might be, one might be having the business, and hey, I'll give you life insurance, but one has a certain payout, and the other one has a residual payout, right? Understanding how that might operate or feel to the individuals as they look at that.
Yep. And a couple of things you've kind of touched on too is, so first, yeah, enlisting like a certified financial planner to help you get organized, see what all of your assets, liabilities are, and your incomes and streams of income, et cetera. But then also making sure that you are taken care of first. We do see that a lot where the parents, and it is good. It's nice to see. I actually like seeing it when the parents are like, oh, I want to do this for this kid, this for this kid, this for this kid, but they don't really make sure that they're whole first. And those kids can get loans for school, they can get loans for cars, but you can't really get a loan for retirement, or a lot of times it's difficult too. So really making sure that you're taken care of first really is what can help you support your kids the best.
I mean, some of the questions on those questionnaires that are given it, they're they were shocking to me. Like I was amazed by like things I didn't even think about. Like how many weddings do you think your kids are going to have that you're going to want to be able to support? Right? When do you think your kids are going to get married, and how much money do you think they'll need? Do you want to live in a retirement home? Do you not want to live in a retirement home? Do you just start looking at some of the expenses? Are you going to want a new car? Right? How old's your car now? If you make it 10 more years, are you going to drive that for the next 10 years, or are you looking to buy another car somewhere? What the house you're living in now? How old's the roof? Is that roof going to last until you pass away? I mean, like I literally was that silly. I thought to myself, wow, they're asking some really tough questions, but like the one about the weddings was great. I looked at it and go, all right, how much am I going to spend per wedding, and when can I do it? Now maybe they do or don't get married, or maybe it's not as much as I think it's going to be, but it's always better to plan more than less, and at least be able to have it in front of us. My judgment is that I get to a point where I kind of blind it out. It just seems like too big of a task to think of. And
Yeah.
if I can't think of all of it, I'm not going to think of any of it. And that leaves me a spot where I have this level of anxiety. For me, when there's like an underlying level of anxiety of why I work so hard. Like I'm fear like I'm going to be broke in retirement. And if I can take
Hmm.
that and that kind of shadow and take that around front and go, all right, look, what do I really need? Right? How much am I going to need? If my house is paid off, I've got some taxes. If my cars are paid off, I might need a new one somewhere. I got some repair work to do on them. As I look at traveling as a senior, what kind of traveling do I want to do? Nowadays I kind of don't want to fly in coach to Europe, right? That ticket's $4,000 as opposed to what used to be $900, right? Or
Yeah.
$5,000. It used to be $900 I could get away with going to Europe. Now it's a little bit more because traveling 9 hours in a coach seat makes it really difficult to travel well. I know that sounds a little, but look, it's like you start your vacation at the gate, as opposed to
Yeah.
getting off the plane and for the next 2 days you're still stuck.
And adjusting. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So it's that kind of stuff that I think that's really exciting, but not something I was ever trained for. Like my parents didn't really talk that way. My mother maybe told me to save half the money I made. That was the biggest financial planning. She
Yeah.
said, if you'll take this money, and she always, as a kid, would have me save 50% of all the money I made. And then she goes, you can spend the rest
That's
of
a
it.
big percentage.
Well,
Yeah.
I was a kid, and at 16, I wanted to buy a car. So she really helped me, between my, first entrepreneurial experiences mowing lawns. She's like, look, you're making $25 or $30 a lawn. How about you take $15 of that, put that in savings, and go blow the other 15. Have at it, right? Go to buy whatever you want. I'm not gonna judge you. And then that kind of made up pretty good. And right when I turned 16, and I was the first kid on my block to have a car, and that felt really good, right?
Yeah.
It felt really nice to have earned with my own hands that money. So I think some of that stuff is important to pass on, because financial
Hmm.
planning is part of a successful mindset.
Yeah. And kind of the things that you were just touching on is that cash flow planning too for retirement. And I think once you really do write it all down and see, okay, I need this for the mortgages, I need this for health insurance, I need this for the car payments. And even if you don't have a car payment, maybe see what the car payment would be. So you can kind of just factor those types of things in because you need a new car every 5-10 years, whatever it is. So just kind of factor in all those monthly expenses. And and then you can really set aside or set up portions of your investment to cover those bare minimums. So okay, no matter what, I have these taken care of, these bare minimum costs. So you're going to be okay, kind of even the worst case scenarios, just from your social security income or maybe pensions or annuities. I know annuities are a bad word out there a lot of times, but just knowing that you have like all the bare minimums covered no matter what is a good feeling to have.
It is absolutely, bring it in front, right? That shadow, right? Because when I keep it in the shadow, there's where, one of the ideas I have, let me kind of expand on this a minute. So when I worry about things, right, it seems like when I don't really look at them and I worry about them, for me, how it feels like in my brain is like the idea bounces around my brain, right? It's like, and it actually takes up a lot more space than it justifies, right? When I stop and I do the rigorous work of going a deep dive into it and really looking at it, I might look at it and go, all right, great. Let's say I want 10 grand or 20 grand a month to live, right? Let's say somewhere I want to create a retirement that says I want to be debt free and make 20 grand a month, right? So I can
Yeah.
start to look at assets that will achieve that, right? I can start to look
Yeah.
at, all right, do I want to get residual income through property? And that's one of the strategies I had was I started developing, my income producing properties, right? How much money do I need for maintenance on them? How much money do I need for some, management of them? How much money I need for lawn care and pool care on those houses? And then I could take, all right, how much do I plan on having as income from those after expenses? And then I can look at that and go, all right, great. I can start to count on, $1,000 from this property, $1,000 from that property. And then, my goal was to get to a point where I could, my first goal really was $10,000 a month. And then I got that. And I'm like, well, I guess my life got a little bit bigger since I thought about that. Now I thought I need $20,000 a month. And you kind of look at life and you're like, well, you got to kind of watch out because life keeps getting bigger, right? I've got 5
Yeah.
kids and it keeps getting a little bit bigger. And you start going, all right, so $20,000 a month seems reasonable, right? But I'm not sure how that'll be in the next 10 years, right? 10 years from now, how will that be? And starting to predict that and look at that feels like something that is important to do as we think this through, right?
Yeah. And just kind of sitting down maybe once a year with your significant other and figuring out, okay, what are those goals? What is important to you? What's important to your family? What do you value? Is it vacation? Is it not flying coach? Is it whatever's important to you guys? And just really writing that down so you know what they are and what they are as they change over time.
Yeah, I think that's great. Just having it in front of you, looking at it, and just having that strategy in place. And again, what happens once I bring it in front of me, it doesn't become this thing that bounces around my brain. It may be something I have to achieve, right? I'm not there yet, but that feels a lot more reasonable. Once I have a goal, somehow or another, what feels funny to me is like the world kind of lines up to fulfill the goal, right? Opportunities
Yeah.
come in place, but I got to be able to see what is it that I want to achieve. And if I just keep it in the shadow, right, worrying about something I don't clearly understand, right, then it doesn't feel like I'm gonna get anywhere, and it creates this underlying anxiety that's not serving me very well.
Also, I think making sure the whole family's on the same page too with what these goals are, or at least aware that maybe you guys have different goals. That maybe the spouses have, because we sometimes sit down with families and one spouse goal is to sell everything and buy a motor coach or whatever and cruise around, and the other one's like, I want to have a beach house and I want to have a mountain house and never set foot in an RV. So, kind of figuring out, making sure that those goals are aligned between the two spouses as well is really important.
And it changes. I mean, so we started off with, we live in an old factory now. And
Yeah.
for the longest time, we said, we're going to pull out of this house in our next house, like an RV. We're going to get a really nice RV and we're going to pull out of it. And then, we've been doing a lot of VRBOing around the world. When we go on vacation, we do a lot of VRBOing. And my wife's like, I wonder what it'd be like if we would just went 2 months or 3 months to a different country at a time, right? If we kind of just moved and did that as a different way of doing it. So I think you keep it keeps unfolding, right? And you kind of keep reassessing, which is a natural part of it, right? You don't have to stick to one idea, but having keep looking at it, keeping it in front of me. I was like, well, that's a cool idea. And we started looking at budgets for that, and you're like, hmm, it's really not that bad. If you look at what a
Yeah.
monthly rate on a VRBO is, and then how I could go somewhere and unpack one time and kind of really discover the area, the region, the foods. That seemed kind of fun.
Yeah. And then it kind of all circles back into the planning as well, too, because then you can say, okay, I'm going to be in this state 6 months and a day out of the year versus being in this state 6 months and a day out of the year. And that could save you 13% depending on what those two states are.
That's a great one right
So
there,
kind of
right?
planning,
Right,
planning around that too.
yeah, to figure out taxes. And I mean, look, Illinois is a tough one. I'm in Illinois, and we got,
Yeah.
I mean, taxes alone, property taxes here are crazy. And you start looking at places like Texas and Florida and some other spaces, and you're like, man, I'll get a 8 or 9% raise by just moving there on property taxes.
Yep. Property taxes and then income taxes and just kind of looking at all those things that it can change. It could be 20% swing depending on property taxes and income taxes alone.
Wow. That's a big number. Right. So as
Yeah.
people are looking for a financial planner to really look at them and really start to look at, all right, I'd like to create some multi-generational wealth for my family. How do we start to do that, and how do they start to pick, a financial advisor?
Yeah. So I think there's a few really good resources out there that we're not affiliated with at all. So one would be kind of like Zoe Financial. That's ZOE Financial. And then they really vet financial planners to make sure that they're independent, make sure that a lot of times they're certified financial planners, and independent meaning that they aren't tied to a specific product or a specific company, where they can go out and shop the whole marketplace to see what's best for you and your family. I think that's a really good starting point, using something like that.
So go to a platform like that, start to look for someone that's is this someone you want to be local with? You want to be able to sit down with them, or is it something I can do on Zoom?
Yeah. So we work with clients all over the country. We do have an office in Chicago and an office in Indy, and
Whoop, whoop.
I'm in the Denver office. Um, but yeah, we have clients in California, we have clients in New York, we have clients in Florida, Texas, all over the place. We actually do have a CFP down in Houston, but we have clients in Dallas. So you can really, in today's world, do everything remotely pretty easily.
Cool. Well, I got to tell you, I love the work that you're doing. Your group does some amazing stuff with, really creating it. Are you seeing anything in the future that really that makes you nervous about the economy, or any suggestions you have as people are looking at this, short term and then long term?
Yeah. So not financial advice, but what Goldman Sachs and First Trust and all these research firms are putting out there is they think we might get down to like 3,500 on the S&P, something like that. So there might be another 10% dip, 15% dip potentially. That's what these analysts are saying. They're wrong all the time though.
Yeah.
But even the analysts that are saying that by the end of the year, we should end up about equal with where we began the year, which would be slightly down from where we are right now because we had a really good January. So they're thinking all in all this year, we end about where it began.
Yeah, I'm seeing guys like Warren Buffett who are really out there in a big cash, holding a lot of cash, right? They're looking for some
Mm-hmm.
of the opportunities that may come by it as this market all the way up until we get to elections. They feel like there's going to be a lot of shifting, mostly down from there. But at least that's what they're saying. The real estate player I am, I'm always looking for real estate one way. It doesn't matter when I'm looking. I'm always looking for real estate as a bargain. I don't care if it's the height of the market or low of the market. There's always real estate deals out there to be had. How do I find the ones
Mm-hmm.
that fit my strategy? No matter when what the market's doing, I'm looking for the type of project that that fits in my portfolio. Um, but I'm hearing that there's a lot of these guys out there. They're kind of they're in cash positions, looking for
Yeah.
that, and really seeing things like cryptocurrency as an opportunity that will take be at a low point somewhere this year, and then somewhere in 2027 kind of kick it back up to having some
Yeah.
some big growth. So
Yeah,
I
and
find it.
cash is scary though, just because inflation. I mean, so then you're just losing purchasing power. So you're almost guaranteeing a loss in some aspects if you sit on too much cash. I know it's obviously part of the portfolio and part of the overall plan, but you're almost guaranteeing a loss if you hold on to it for too long. And what gets scary about that is just trying to time the market is extremely difficult. Even the best firms in the world can't do it consistently over a long period of time. And if you look at the worst performing days, if you put together a chart and look at the worst performing days of the market and then look at the best performing days of the market over like a 20-year period of time, they stack really close to each other. So you might have like a negative 5% day and you're like, oh, good, I was in cash, I missed that. But then the next day could be like a positive 5, and then it could be like a positive 3, a positive 2. And you could miss that bull run completely. So just by missing a few of the best performing days, you can really cost yourself over. If you look at the average return over a long period of time, it's tough to time that.
When I go to Vegas, I usually like to gamble about $300. And then what I do is
Yeah.
I walk through the casino and I look for the roulette table that has the numbers I mostly play. And I sit down
The
on,
ones that have hit recently is what you look
yeah,
at.
yeah. Like I look at the ones that seem like they're my numbers, and maybe those my numbers are hot on that table. Now I feel the exact same way when I sit at that table, knowing it's, as much any number coming. I know theoretically that any number it can go hot at any second. But I feel the same way about the stock market, right? Like I kind of like leave some money in there, right? But it happens to be that every time I've ever gone to the stock market, like I bought crypto at its height, right?
Mhm.
I'm sitting on 50% losers on most of my crypto
Yeah.
investments. It's not something I know, right? I took it on like, all right, watching this thing kind of go. I don't know that marketplace, and I got caught up in the hysteria of it. Now I didn't sell it. I kind of let it sit in there, and hoping that maybe in the next 4 or 5 years somewhere I'll get back to even. But it's not enough money where it really matters to me. I put it just enough in there to kind of tiptoe into it, right? For me, that's one of those ones where I just don't get them. I don't get crypto yet, and I don't get the stock market yet. Those are just things that I have no real control over. For me, in my investments, I look at real estate. I like to find an underappreciated piece of property, something like the crappiest house on a nice block, right? Somewhere where
Hmm.
I can go paint the door now, or paint the doors and windows and fix the floors. And okay, look, I get some value out of it, and some long-term value where I can leverage it, maybe even take a small mortgage to get to, and let it buy itself down, right? You let it
Yeah.
buy the property cash, and then get myself out of it, and then have it pay for itself over time. And I
Hmm.
mean, I don't make a lot of cash on it now, but ultimately I don't need the money today. I need the money in 20 years when I want to retire.
Are you still finding that kind of works for people getting into the real estate world right now, and say that they do need to leverage 80% of it just with where interest rates are? If
I
people are
see,
able
see
to still cash flow?
I'm more of the cash buyer up front, right? So I cash
Got
buy up
it.
front, right? And now this last year, it's crazy from where interest rates have gone in the last 12 months. It's just, I mean, I was getting 3 and 4% loans a year ago now, and now you're
Yeah,
at
exactly.
7%. Those are that's a little bit more. Uh, that's not real sustainable. But now you
Yeah.
can go. I tell my kids, I'm like, go buy crappier houses. Seriously, go
Yeah.
buy. I bought houses for $7,000, right? If you got
What?
for 7,000, one of the first houses I ever bought was $7,000, and it had a fire in the middle of the living room. But that's when I was young and I could do all the sweat equity, right? Me and my buds would go in there and we just worked our asses off on the weekends. And we'd, scraped it all out, did all the demolition. I'm like, that's what you get when you're young, right? When you're young,
Mhm.
yeah. Here, in fact, I had never done a roof before. I remember I sat in Home Depot with, I went up on the roof and I kind of just pried off. There was a fire in the middle of the living room. Like it burned a hole right through the top of it. Like you walked in the living room, you could see the sky. And I'm like, that's what you got it for $7,000. And everybody else was too scared to buy it. And I was like, look, I mean, $7,000. I could lose all
Mhm.
$7,000 if I don't do this right, but it's $7,000, and I was young, right? in my early 20s, I'm like, it's $7,000. If I lost it all, it's not like I'm gonna, lose my retirement.
You'll survive.
I'll survive, right? And then,
Yeah.
I just slowly built that thing up, and it was literally, there was probably 10 or I've had that house for 30 something years, right? For 30.
Oh, that's awesome. You still have it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It produces $1,900 a month every single month for
Wow.
30 years. 30. The
That's
tenant's been in
amazing.
there. The tenant's been in there for the last 20. I've had a tenant in there for the last 22 plus years. It's great. Great guy. Pays cash every single month. Right. He's here. And we've upgraded that house every couple of years. We brand new kitchens, brand new baths, because it's a cash producer, and you want to take care of the tenant, and you want them to love the place, and it's pristine. That little house that was a piece of crap when we bought it now is a cool looking house. It's kind of all cooled out. It's got a carport. It's got this great yard and great stuff in there. But you kind of you got the cash flow to do it, and you want to take care of your tenants so that look, 20 years. That guy's been in there for 20 years. He's paid for all
That's
those
amazing.
upgrades all the way along the way. And remember, I don't need the cash today because I work for a living, and
Yeah.
I need the cash later on, and making reinvestments in those properties and other properties like that. Hey, look, take care of your tenants. Make sure they have air conditioning. Make sure most of the properties I buy are in Florida. I kind of like I like buying in a kind of a region where I can get to them pretty easily. So it feels like that's a smarter way to look at it.
Hmm.
Um, but here in Chicago, there are $10,000 houses everywhere, right? I mean, I'm not going to tell you they're in great neighborhoods, but at the end of the day, if you can buy a property and just get started, right, and just get a basic tenant in there that can work for you, long term, every neighborhood changes. It may take 20 years to get
Yeah.
there. That neighborhood I bought that house in was kind of a rough neighborhood 30 years ago, right? Today, it's a decent middle class Florida neighborhood, right? It's not the top of the
Yeah.
food chain. It's not the bottom of the food chain. It's a decent middle class neighborhood, and families there's lots of kids on that block, lots of families. It just kind of makes it easy for that young homeowner or renter to rent from, and it's never, the house has never been vacant, never. I mean,
Yeah.
in 30 years, it's never had more than a month's worth of a rent not collected. So that's the
That
kind
is
of stuff
crazy.
that I like when I look at financial planning. That feels a little bit more um,
You have more
stable.
control. Or yeah,
Yeah.
it's more stable. Yeah.
Well,
And
well,
there's a lot of really good resources out there too. There's a lot of really good books like Bigger Pockets. And one of the guys that used to be with Bigger Pockets wrote that book, Rental Property Investing, something like that. And they really do outline every single thing you should think about before you get into those deals too. Like
don't
what's the out of pocket, what's the HOA, what's the upkeep, maintenance, turnover, all of that.
don't do condos. I mean, unless you can get a condo that at least I've got one condo out of all the properties I own, and it's a small little 18 unit building, right? I'm one of 18. The condo fees are like, I don't know, 375 a month. Not too
Was it
bad,
forever?
right?
Yeah.
Right. It's not a great. It's not great. Every once in a while they'll have a $5,000 or $10,000 assessment for a new roof or something that goes in there. But look, that property cash flows, $1,200 a month, right? It's I'm getting 1,500, $1,600 a month for that place, and it cash flows. So look, if I've had that for a while, and if that
That seems like a good one. Why do you say no condos then? Or why do you feel negative about
well,
condos?
for me, I think there's a lot of risk in that. It depends if you don't buy right. If you buy the ones that are too expensive, some of these HOA fees are so expensive that you can't make a profit. You can't cash flow out of them, right? If you're sitting there working for the HOA, that's a tough one to be the tough one to be at. Even though you're getting some property appreciation, right? That property bought originally in the low under 100,000. And today, the neighborhood just sold for the unit right next to me is sold for 200,000, right? I think it was like
Mhm.
70, 80,000 bucks originally. I mean, you're getting some property appreciation, which is valuable, right? But the game is you want to kind of create. For me, I'm looking for that cash flow into retirement. Looking for that
Yep.
spot where I can count on a good cash flow.
Yeah.
And the building, their assessments will go up, right? It's Florida, there's hurricanes, their insurance that got killed. I'm on the board of directors over there, so it takes a little bit more work on those properties. My real take is that when I buy great, I like low to middle income properties. I bought some higher end properties, and some of those are a little hard to. Their tenants seem to be a lot more have higher expectations, and there seems to be a little bit of more of a lot more cost associated with that, where the low to middle income tenants seem to be, a lot more easy to satisfied. Their expectations are a little bit lower.
Huh. Huh.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and
That's
I
a good
don't
thing to
just,
keep in mind. I haven't even heard of that. Yeah.
well,
Makes sense though. Makes complete sense.
yeah, I haven't done much. Some people say do all Section 8. I'm not a big Section 8. I haven't had the most luck with those. I've tried a few times and had some successes and some failures. So, I kind of look for the right tenant. Spend good time looking for tenants. It's good to lose it. I'd rather lose a month's rent than taking a bad tenant. And so looking for who's that right family to bring in, how do I think they're going to treat the property, what I can do to support them and being a successful family, right? And that feels the same way when I get into commercial properties, right? I've got a couple of commercial buildings where when I look at those, find the right tenants, right? Good long-term tenants that you can support, and making sure, every tenant I have in a commercial world, I work on trying to get at least 1 month's rent during the year to supporting their business, right? How can I take that cash and help them go social media, put new signage up, do something to give back to the tenant in a way. So I kind of factor that right into the strategy, saying, all right, look, if I really want to keep a long-term tenant there, right? If they're financial successful, that keeps my long-term planning successful. Again, I don't need the cash flow today, right? Today, what I'm looking to do is build a long-term real estate portfolio of solid tenants that are, cash flowing for the long haul.
And that's really nice. I feel like most landlords are not doing that. So that probably
So,
helps you stand out quite a bit by doing that too, I
yeah,
imagine.
yeah, it feels like you're in partnership with the people you're working with, as opposed to take. And you can see it in their success, right? You're actively part of making sure their signage is better. We just had one tenant, a gym. He just put all kinds of new signage up. You just watched his membership just it just grew. Now
Yeah.
what that does is it stabilizes, and he just came out of COVID, right, where gyms got killed, right? They got nailed.
Yeah.
And I said, look, let's help him. We helped him through the rents during COVID, and then we supported him and really doing some great new signage that really lit up the street for him. And he got seen, right? He's got a space that is on a street that people drive by relatively fast, but there's a light there. So when that light stops, his signage makes a big difference. So I paid a company to come in and really do some great graphics on the building, and you could really see that people came out of COVID like, all right, I want to get back in shape, and his membership just took off through the roof. Again, that's just making sure that your
Love it.
long-term investment is in some good shape. Well, I know we went all over the place. So
I know.
real estate. We talked about the market. We hit the crypto a little bit. Anything that you want to make sure we talk about with those young entrepreneurs? How about how to start a business? I know that's a big part of your strategies. How to start a new business.
Yeah, it's probably in line with the same thing with trying to make your financial plan, get it in place, partner with the right people, and then just really sit down, pen to paper, and figure out what's important to you. What are your goals? Do you want it to be more of a lifestyle business? How much do you want out of the business? Is it income focused? Is it exit focused? And then it's just really simple to get started. All you have to do is register, set up an LLC, get an EIN number, open a bank account. And I would say to try to put all the expenses just on one debit card, one credit card that's associated with the EIN is going to make your life way easier for tracking deductions and expenses, things like that. And then also have the income go into that same bank account. So you can see, okay, here's my revenue, here's my expenses, here's my net income that I'm going to pay taxes on. That'll make your life a lot easier instead of trying to track personal cards and stuff like that.
It's a nightmare. Look, every entrepreneur does it. Oh, I'll sneak this on my business card. Oh, look,
Yeah.
I've been there. I've been there. Right. Oh, I'll throw this dinner on there. I'll call it a business expense. The more I can see my business, and believe me, I'm not preaching, because I've been just as bad at that as anybody out there, right? Where, but today I've got, I sat down with a new CFO I have for one of my companies, and she said to me, look, one day you're going to want an exit strategy out here. I know that saving that tax money feels great by writing off a couple of expenses, but really what you don't understand what it's doing is it's affecting your exit strategy long term, right? Somewhere
Yes.
you're going to be great on your EBITDA, and you want to make sure that you that number is as high as possible for creating a value for a sale somewhere. If you want to, sell to your employees or find an exit strategy. And, sometimes you get short-sighted, like, man, that 30% in taxes seems like it's a lot. But when you really look
Yep.
at your long-term strategy, what's that really costing you? You're saving 30 cents, but now you're losing what could be dollars.
Well, also, if you need debt to buy a building, debt to grow, marketing, hire, whatever you need debt for, banks are really going to prefer to see a higher net income number. Um, so it's going to help a lot from that aspect too, which then could help you grow quicker if you have access to the right type of capital.
That's right. That's right. It just tells your story a lot cleaner. It is not, it's not in our nature to do that, right? Taxes seem to be something that's kind of painful for all of us. But getting in that right habits,
Yep.
ultimately makes you a much better entrepreneur. And, really I've learned is over the years, getting as get as impeccable as possible, right? And you're always going to have something to work on. There's always something, something in your business to work on that's not impeccable, but getting impeccable finances is the key to really seeing your business. I've worked for some amazing entrepreneurs out there, guys who own some really big companies, guys like Wayne Huizinga and Don Flynn. And I've watched those guys really they start by really having financial analytics. That the real tell
Yeah.
of a business isn't about my gut feeling or how good I'm doing. It's the finances, right? Debt to income ratio, looking at how leveraged we are, how much revenue we're generating, how profitable are the projects we're working on, but not in a way, the problem is I have this built-in, excuse the language, but BSer, right? It wants to
Yeah.
BS myself because I'm an entrepreneur. I see the world as half roses, glass half full. I'm always looking at
Yeah.
everything through rose colored lenses, right? I BS myself, and
Hmm.
you want to look at the real numbers and go, all right, what do we actually bring in? And then what did the project actually cost us for the employees, the interest rates, our insurances, the cost of goods? What are our actual costs? And guys, great guys like Wayne will tell you it was always in their finances, right? Being able to see a business through your finances is the key to being able to develop great companies. And they would start with a
Yeah.
great accounting team and. Some of those guys that came from the old Arthur Anderson and some of those, he had some amazing financial analytics at every company I ever worked with them.
Yep. And now, luckily, there's a lot of good online bookkeeping services that do it really low cost too, and give you a lot of that data that you would want to see extremely affordable. I don't know any of the names of them off the top of my head, but I
Oh,
know there's
like
a lot
QuickBooks.
out there. That's
Okay,
it. Yeah, or QuickBooks.
you
Yeah.
you can do QuickBooks literally on your online. You and your partners can start with a QuickBooks account. They're as low as $12 a month. I mean, seriously, you
Yeah.
get QuickBooks for $12. They even have an app where you can put all your expenses on it, and while you're buying things and you can put it right into categories, and it's instantly looking at your business. Now, how willing are you to really be vulnerable and look at your real finances, not the ones you make up and tell everybody, not your ego, right?
Yeah.
How
Your
willing,
revenue number. Yeah.
right? Now, here's my revenue. Hey, I did 60 million. Here, we did this last year. I have a company I did 60 million with last year. I spent all day
Yeah.
Saturday this last year. We doubled. We went from $30 million in revenue to $60 million in revenue in 1 year, right? That's a $30 million
Yeah.
change, but our profitability dropped down to nothing, right? We made
Oh,
$200,000
yeah.
on $60 million, right? After expenses, we made $280,000. And you look at that, that's a
Yeah.
miserable number, right? I mean, we're a
Yeah.
debt-free company. All the other analytics inside those numbers are great, right? There's no debt. The accounts payable, receivable, those ratios are all great. They're great. But when you look at how much money we kept, now you could also go through. It was a death by 1,000 paper cuts, right? As we went through it, we had um, you know, tool rentals. It's a construction company. And, if you just looked at how many days we didn't return tools back on time, someone would rent a forklift or a backhoe or
Oh, just little things.
I don't think it's literally a death by 1,000 paper cuts, $10,000 a week. And it was 500 grand in tool rental, overages, right? There was 500 grand in, on that 60 million, you should be making $2.5 3 million in
Mhm.
profitability. We made $285,000. And if you look at, there was a $50,000 in project overages, time. You said you could do it in 10 weeks. It took you 14 weeks, right? What it cost you for those people, loss of revenue, having to hire another person to fill the job that they should have gone to after they were done. You could really start to look at analytics. And now some of that might be just natural part of growing dynamic businesses, right? But you want to make sure you get that in front of you so that you're not repeating that behavior as you go forward. Really making sure that you create financial stability and impeccable financial reporting as you grow each one of your businesses.
That's good. I love
Nice.
it. You got me fired up.
Well, get on it. I know you're amazing at the stuff that you're doing. If people want to get a hold of you, Scott, where do they go to get a hold of you?
I think the best place to get a hold of us and just some of our free content that we put out there is just bulletwealth.com. And we have a podcast we put out every Wednesday. And then we have every Monday, or we try to do every Monday, just a little market update, how the markets are looking, what we're seeing, and what some of the analysts are saying. So that's all just bulletwealth.com.
That's awesome. You got a lot of content online. You guys do a great job of your podcast. It's amazing. I'm coming out. I think I'm on your episode coming out this week. That'd be fun.
Yeah, tomorrow.
Yeah.
Good
cool.
timing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're tomorrow on ours.
So we'll see how that goes. And that was a lot of fun taping on your show. And I'm so honored to have you over here on our show, and grateful for the work that you're doing. And I really feel special about having you on today. So thank you very much for taking the time to be with our audience.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
All the great stuff. All right, audience, as always, if you guys could take a second right now, just please take 1 second and like and subscribe. Please, it takes a second, and it means the world to Scott and I. Those likes and those subscriptions mean the world to our whole team. All the hard work in the background to generate a podcast, to do the work, to do this. When you like and subscribe, it just really says thank you. And if you don't mind doing that now, we'd be grateful. So thank you very much for listening. As always, we're grateful.